Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. As you can tell by my lower third, if you watch me on YouTube, please call me Sully. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen, as we're available on all your free podcasting catchers. And you can follow us on your smart device if you tell it to play podcast Locked On MLB, or check out some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, including Locked On Diamondbacks with our friend Miller Thomas, who joins us every Monday for our Monday crossover. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On MLB Pod. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Recording this one on the 9th day of April 2022. It's a Saturday drop. We're going to have, I guess it's 6 episodes this week. There you go. I'm giving you one extra one here. But there's so much to cover, and I don't want to have things fall by the wayside. We're 2 games into the regular season, folks, and it's already a couple of interesting facets. I don't like to get too crazy about results this early, but there are a couple points I want to make, especially when you consider the scrums that are going to happen later in the season. Hey, we are now 2 games into the regular season, and I think the single most fascinating thing about what's happened so far, and I wanted to get this thought in before the games start. They're going to start in about an hour from where I'm recording right now. Baltimore and Tampa are going to be playing each other, Jordan Lyles and going up against Rasmussen. The big game that I have a tremendous yes, Red Sox Yankees are playing. I'm going to talk about the game that happened the other day. The Musgrove, who threw the first no-hitter in the history of the San Diego Padres last year and caused a tweet of mine to go viral, is going up against Davies of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And as we're sitting here right now, this is the 3rd game of the season for both San Diego and for Arizona. And Musgrove he's going to try to keep going what Sean Manaea and Yu Darvish did in the first 2 games of the season, which was Yu Darvish had a no-hitter going, and he wound up throwing 6 no-hit innings on opening day. It's opening day. You don't want to have someone throw 9 innings, especially because you had a shortened spring training. I get that. And they pulled him with a no-hitter still alive. Now, the Diamondbacks rallied, and a guy named Seth Beer on Beer Night wound up hitting a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th to give Arizona the victory. And the very next day, Sean Manaea, making his National League debut for the San Diego Padres, threw 7 no-hit innings. And this time, San Diego held on to the 3-0 victory. Well, that means Musgrove is trying to keep that alive, that you've had 2 straight games where the San Diego Padres starting pitching did not allow a hit. Can they make it 3 straight games? And Musgrove threw the no-hitter last year. Does he have another no-hitter in him today? I think one thing we've learned is that the Padres starting pitching looks pretty good right out of the gate. They're playing Arizona, one of the worst teams in baseball. Sorry, Millard. But we're going to see if the no-hit streak can continue. Hey, I'm starting to do Who Owned Baseball, and I'm going to try my best to include some of these in the actual podcast. On opening day, on the 7th day of April, Seth Beer owned baseball with the 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th to win the game for Arizona. Give some love to Alex Bregman, who singled and homered as the Astros pounded the Angels 3-1, and also give love to Framber Valdez. If the Astros wind up having good pitching, and I did pick Seattle to win the West because I'm not a fan of the Astros starting pitching, but if Framber Valdez can pitch like he did the other night, then things are going to look good in Houston. Adam Wainwright, the ageless Adam Wainwright, threw 6 scoreless innings. Cardinals beat Pittsburgh 3-0 in the opening day. Some half-wobs, meaning the players who had great days on losing efforts. I mentioned Yu Darvish threw 6 no-hit innings against Arizona. Shohei Ohtani pitched in the 5th inning, pitched very well, struck out 9 Astros along the way. He took the hard luck loss for the Angels. Austin Riley went 3 for 4 in the opener. Braves were doubled up by Cincinnati 6-3. And Miles Straw in the first ever Cleveland Guardians game, he got on base 3 times, but the Guardians lost to KC 3-1. And then on yesterday, full wobs, Sean Manaea mentioned 7 no-hit innings. Robbie Ray, great start for the Seattle Mariners. Big league, his Seattle debut went 7 innings, allowed 1 run, and the Mariners beat Minnesota 2-1. Another Astros slugger, Kyle Tucker, homered twice. The Astros pounded the Angels 13-6. And Jeff McNeil got on base 4 times. The Mets beat the Washington Nationals 7-3. The Mets won the opener and then won the second game with Scherzer pitching. So the Mets are off to a good start. The half-wobs, Chaz Chisholm hit very well for the Marlins, but the Giants walked off 6-5. Lucas Giolito struck out 6 in 4 innings, but the Tigers rallied against the White Sox bullpen. I was for the trade of Craig Kimbrell. It doesn't look great when their bullpen had a big-time collapse. Merrill Kelly pitched very well in the Arizona Diamondbacks loss to the Padres. And Mitch Garver singled, homered, walked, and the Rangers blew the opener to Toronto. I want to bring something up right now. You can't get too excited. It's still early April. Obviously, there's so many games left to play. But remember, at the end of the year, and this is going to happen now even with the extra wild card team. At the end of the year, there's always a team that misses the playoffs by a game. It happened with Toronto last year. They missed the playoffs by a single game. Year in and year out, there's one team that looks like, and we put all the emphasis on the games down the stretch in August and September. And when you lose some big games there, like Robbie Ray lost a huge game for Toronto last year against New York in the second to last series of the season. And if Toronto had won that game, they would have tied for a wild card spot. But I want to bring up a concept of the teeth grinder versus the dodged bullet. That the games that you lose early in the year, everyone's going to lose some games, everyone's going to win some games. What you want to avoid is the teeth grinder. And what you want to get is the dodged bullet. Let me explain what that means. A teeth grinder game, and these are subjective terms, are the games which at one point as a fan, you think, we've got this. This game's in the bag. We've won this. Psychologically, you say, ease up on the throttle. We're going to win this game. And they somehow lose it. Or sometimes it's like, you know what? You can't win them all. And you kind of like, you say, well, we're not going to win this one. You can't win them all. And then suddenly your team comes back to win. So, man, I wasn't even considering the fact that they could come back. That's a dodged bullet. You want to have more dodged bullets than teeth grinders. It's a subjective feeling. It's not just a close game. Sometimes you can be in a close game and think, I don't know who's going to win this. And that's basically like a coin toss. Sometimes a final score can appear close, but in actuality, it never was as close as the final score appeared. Or sometimes a game can be super close until the 8th or 9th innings when the team pulls away. And so it looks like a blowout. It's a subjective feeling that you have when watching a game. Man, I didn't even consider the fact we were going to lose that game. Or, heck, I gave up on that game. I can't believe they won. There was one year, as a Red Sox fan, I tallied that for the Red Sox. How many games they had that were teeth grinders versus dodged bullets. How many games did they win that you feel like, oh, man, I didn't even think I gave up on them and they won that game. And how many games did they lose that made you think, oh, are you kidding me? I thought this game was in the bag. The year I did it, it's a very specific year with the concept of getting the playoffs by one game or fewer. And the results were interesting. And if I could do this for every single team, I would. But the fact of the matter is, I don't have that kind of time. If we want to have, if we want to have uh, support our podcast and make sure that the sales go through the roof, maybe I'll be able to pull that off in the 2023 season. But I need some energy. I mean, because I got a full-time job as well. And one way I like to get energy is I grab myself a Built Bar, the best tasting energy bars out there. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. The first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. It's not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with incredible flavors: yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're so good, they're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. Real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com, scroll down to the macros chart. You're going to be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that with a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond, my favorite, which is raspberry. All new this month: white chocolate, cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think of a new flavor, they'll make it. That's what Built Bar does. They think about making them delicious first, then they worry about making them good for you. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off at built.com. And hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. How about making your second listen be Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby, who's a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. The year was 2011, and I tallied the number of games that the Red Sox won that I felt psychologically, man, I think they had a shot at that. And how many games they lost that made me think, oh, wow, I thought this game was in the bag. How did they blow it? And in the end, they turned out net positive that year by a few games. And remember, that was the year of the classic Game 162, where the Red Sox blew the lead in the fried chicken and beer month, where they absolutely collapsed down the stretch. And they lost that game to Baltimore. All the while, the Rays won on the walk-off home run by Evan Longoria. And that year, the Red Sox actually won more games that it felt like, oh, man, how did we win that? Than they did lose that made you grind your teeth. It can be surprising, the results. But the reason why I think it's interesting, and it would be interesting to actually tally, and yes, it's subjective, and I understand that. This is all for fun. This is all for talking. It's like who won baseball was subjective on my part as well. But to remember these games that are coming out early in the year. As I said, there are going to be games you lose. There are going to be games you win. But they try to avoid the dumb losses. Try to avoid the losses where you say, like, this game was in the bag. How did we lose this? Case in point, the Red Sox-Yankee game, of which the Red Sox had an early 3-0 lead. They're up 3 runs before the Yankees even came to bat. And Alex Cora tried to lean on the Whitlock pedal for one batter too long. He pitched 2 1/3 shutout innings and was still pitching in the 8th. And he left the game-tying home run to LeMahieu, and you just knew that things were going to go bad. That's it. For the Yankees, that was a dodged bullet. For the Red Sox, it was definitely a teeth grinder because things were lining up the right way. You try to avoid those dumb losses and try to steal those wins because those are the ones you don't have to make up later. The White Sox allowed 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th to the Tigers, who are better than they were a few years ago. But come on, White Sox. You gotta be able to win these games early on. The biggest example of a dodged bullet that I have seen in a while, at least starting this year, happened in Toronto. My pick to win the American League Cy Young Award, Jose Barrios, got absolutely torched and didn't make it out of the first inning. The Blue Jays were down 4 runs before they even came to bat, and it was a 6-0 lead going into the bottom of the second inning. It was a 7-0 lead going into the bottom of the fourth. This was a classic example of, all right, well, we're down 7-0. Let's rest our players and just lick our wounds that there's 161 more games to go. But no, the Jays rallied, and thanks to a Teoscar Hernandez home run in the fifth, they tied the game. The wound up taking the lead. The Rangers tied the game, and then the Blue Jays won and pulled away to a 10-8 win. Now, let's just remember that. If the American League East comes down to a game or two between Toronto and Tampa, if it does, you might be able to look back and say, hey, here's a game which by all accounts, the Blue Jays could have just thrown their hands up in the air and said, nope, we don't have it. Not today. Let's rest our players. Let's turn into it like a spring training game. Instead, they put it in the win column. That's a loss they don't have to deal with now. And to get as many of those early that you don't have to make up later could be the difference. And that's why I think it would be interesting to keep a tally like that for each team throughout the year. Now, I can't do it this year because, again, I don't have the bandwidth to do it. But maybe for 2023, I will work with either the lockdown host or someone for each team and ask them, what do you think? Did you feel like you had this one in the hand, or was this just a close game? The more teeth grinders you avoid, the more dodge bullets you accumulate. A win here, a win there, and stealing a win here, a win there might be the difference between playing in October or not, or avoiding a wild card game or not. So while you don't want to go too crazy about the results this early in the year, keep that in mind. Avoid the teeth grinders and try to dodge a few bullets. And sometimes each of these games, when a team is ahead, like the Rangers up 7-0 to Toronto, it feels like it would be like a surefire bet that the Rangers would hold on to it. But sometimes when you bet, it doesn't turn out that way. It doesn't always turn out the way that you expect. But that's why it's called betting. That's why it's called gambling. And if you like to gamble and you like to bet, go to betonline.net. It's the #1 source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. A couple quick things. I found it encouraging that the Guardians, and yes, I remember to call them the Guardians signed Jose Ramirez to a long-term deal. Along those same lines, the bottom of the payroll level Pittsburgh Pirates wound up signing Ke'Bryan Hayes to a contract extension that will have him signed through the 2029 season with an option for the 2030 season. So he's going to play this entire decade under this contract with the Pirates. Now, it is a very team-friendly contract, and it's front-loaded. He's going to make more money up front than he does later. The idea behind that is the Pirates' payroll is so low right now, they can afford that. And then later in a couple of years, hopefully the Pirates will have a bunch of pretty good players on the team, and you would not be prohibitive from signing more players from Ke'Bryan Hayes' contract. I always find these contracts to be interesting because this could wind up being a gigantic bargain for the Pirates, especially if he turns out to be a legit all-star many years down the line, where suddenly a $7 million contract for an all-star would seem like a steal. On the other hand, he could bust out. He could be a complete bust, and then all of a sudden paying $7 million for him would seem like an extravagance. So I think this is an interesting and cool gamble for the Pirates to say, you are part of our building blocks for this team. You are going to be here for the next bunch of years, so we're going to build around you. And Ke'Bryan is basically playing deal or no deal. He picked the suitcase. He could have waited for another big suitcase, but sometimes that waiting can bite you in the butt. He's going to have $70 million guaranteed. And even after taxes, fees, and agent fees, he's still going to have tens of millions of dollars in the bank. So it's an interesting move for both teams. The Pirates wanting to have a little bit of security, and Bryant not testing the free agent waters, but accepting the job here. I hope it works. I think the Major League Baseball is better with a team like the Pirates playing well. I still, there's a couple of things. I still hate the runner on second in the extra innings. I hate extra innings now. I don't find it interesting. I don't find it fun. I don't find it more exciting. I'm all for tie after 12. Or if you have to have the dumb ghost runner, have it after 12. Let's have a few innings where they can actually play real baseball. You know, the Red Sox lost the game to the Yankees. Fine. It happens. But the walk-off was a single up the middle, a leadoff single up the middle. How is that exciting? And base hit, that's the end of the game. Okay, there you go. That was earned. I know like Javi Reyes from Locked On Padres thinks I need to get over this. No, I like extra inning baseball, and now I hate it. I turn away from it. I don't find it exciting. And I'm willing to accept things that I fought hard against. I really have. Like the universal DH is now is in there. I resisted that. I'm like, okay, I'm stop screaming at the tide. That is something that we have from now on. I will admit it was really weird looking at the National League box scores and following the games and seeing that there is no pitchers batting anymore. That interesting little quirk that made a distinct difference between the two leagues is now gone. I've accepted that. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm not going to die on that hill. Although I do think that because there is absolutely no difference between the American League and the National League right now, why not just realign? Seriously, what's the point? What's the point of having the different leagues? If there's not going to be a difference between the two, realign. Have East, West, South, Central. Boom. And because I think teams like the A's and Padres and Mariners and Angels and Dodgers and Giants should be in the same division. The Mets, Red Sox, the Phillies, the Yankees, they should all be in the same division. They should be the rivals with each other. So what are we doing with this National League, American League now? It is absolutely meaningless. It's meaningless if there's no difference between the two leagues. And so I'm not going to die on the fighting the universal DH hill anymore. I miss the quirk of the pitchers batting, but let's do that. But you have to eliminate ghost runner on second. It's making it brutal. Not just, yes, the Yankees lost to the Red Sox lost to the Yankees, and I hated that. But even if they had won, it's not an earned victory. It feels lame. Have it if you have to have it after 12. I'm fine with a tie after 12, but give us at least a few chances to have actual baseball played. And it will affect so few games if you have it after the 12th inning. Then the whole argument of it only affects a handful of games. There's a bunch of extra inning games every day. So anyway, well, look at the season started. We got baseball to talk about. We got a full slate of games going on this Saturday. They're going to be starting in just a few minutes, and I'm loving every minute of it. Miller is going to be here for the Monday show, and we're going to review some of the Who Owns Baseball and some other thoughts. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pod. Same handle for Instagram and Twitter. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Following the few games at the front of the schedule and talk about the concept of grinding your teeth or dodging a bullet. This has been Locked On MLB for the 9th day of April 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.